Earnhardt Jr. will be making his NASCAR Xfinity Series return at Richmond International Speedway. Pocono Speedway is going to have full capacity for their doubleheaders, and there's more news in regards to the next-gen car. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a lot of NASCAR stories to discuss here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. Let's start off with all the paint scheme news. First of all, we're going to take a look at a couple of the non-throwback paint schemes, and then we'll jump into the throwback paint scheme. So the first paint scheme we are going to go ahead and take a look at is Brad Keselowski's 2021 Wharf, thanks to the teacher scheme that we are going to see at Dover International Speedway. For a non-throwback car, this is really, really awesome. They're going to be running this, like I mentioned, at Dover International Speedway as a tribute. I've been, honestly, a pretty big fan of the Wharf paint schemes overall, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think, honestly, they did a very, very seriously good job on this paint scheme, and I can't wait to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack at Dover International Speedway here in a couple weeks. The other non-throwback paint scheme we're going to take a look at, I think this one's a non-throwback if I'm not mistaken, is Ryan Reed's 2021 Tandem's Diabetes scheme that we are going to see in the Darlington Truck Series throwback race as well. Ryan Reed is driving a 24 for GMS Racing later this year. I think this is a solid paint scheme overall, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm definitely looking forward to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. And now we're going to jump onto all the throwbacks. And trust me, there are a lot of throwbacks that we need to talk about in today's episode. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those throwbacks for today. The first one we're going to take a look at is Daniel Heimer's throwback to Red Farmer. This throwback is awesome, in my opinion. It colors kind of match what Red Farmer used to drive in the picture you guys see. I think did a solid job on his throwback for sure. The colors match. They're really, really cool. I'm definitely looking forward to see this one out on the racetrack at Darlington in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. The next throwback they're going to take a look at is Erik Jones' throwback to John Andretti when he drove for Richard Petty Enterprises, which is now Richard Petty Motorsports, when he drove for Richard Petty Enterprises. Awesome throwback, in my opinion. I think Richard Petty Motorsports has done a really good job on the throwback so far. This one is awesome, too. I'm definitely looking forward to see this one out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. The next throwback we're going to take a look at is Hailie Deegan's throwback scheme to Ford's first ever endurance win as a Ford Performance throwback to their first ever endurance victory at Daytona in 1966. I think it's really, really cool. And the biggest thing I really, really like about it is how the one's in the middle of that circle. I think that's a really, really good touch. I think they did a pretty solid job on this throwback as well. The next throwback we're going to take a look at is Ryan Newman's 2021 throwback to the 1976 SCCA National Championship team that won with Kohler Generators as their sponsor. Solid paint scheme, in my opinion, from what we saw, the images that were produced. This is a solid paint scheme overall, in my opinion, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. The next throwback paint scheme, or like kind of not throwback, but also kind of a tribute scheme, is Cole Custer's Mother's Day scheme, which is a tribute to Margaret Haas. So you could technically call this a throwback paint scheme. Solid one overall, in my opinion. It also is going to be Mother's Day when this race runs. So, of course, you might see some other Mother's Day race paint schemes, similar to the Justin Haley one, but I think this is a really good Mother's Day tribute to Margaret Haas. They did a solid job overall in this paint scheme, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this one for sure out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. The next throwback paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Kyle Weatherman's throwback scheme to Richard Petty. Good one, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of the Richard Petty throwback paint schemes in the past, and they're usually all really good. This one's no exception. I really like this one a lot. The color scheme matches perfectly. They did a really good job, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this throwback out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. The next throwback we're going to take a look at is another one that I really, really like, is Brandon Brown's 2021 throwback, which is a throwback to Dale Jarrett's You Got Milk or something like that. I think that scheme that he ran in the early 2000s when he ran up front. But also, if you look at the back of the car, he says, what can you do with Brown? And then he's put Brandon on it, which I think that was really, really funny. But yeah, it's an awesome throwback as well. It's a great tribute to Dale Jarrett, and I really like this paint scheme a lot. The next throwback we're going to take a look at is Chase Briscoe's throwback to AJ Foyt's 1986 car, and guess what number he drove? He drove the number 14 car. Colors matched perfectly. Did really, really good job. I love the color scheme of it overall, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this throwback out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. The next throwback paint scheme we are going to go ahead and take a look at is Bubba Wallace's throwback, and this is another one I really, really like as well. His is a tribute, of course, to Wendell Scott. Bubba Wallace has ran a couple tributes to Wendell Scott in the past. In 2014, he ran a tribute to him. Guess what he ended up doing? Winning at Marsville. I think he's got to work cut out for him this time at Darlington. He's not that great at Darlington, to be perfectly honest with you. He's going to have his work cut out for him, but I think he did a really, really good job. It's not my favorite throwback paint scheme that has been released here. I think we've seen a lot more. Saw some people overhyping up the scheme. Not saying it's bad, but I think that there have been better overall paint schemes so far. But it's not a bad throwback paint scheme for sure, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this throwback out on the racetrack once again at Darlington Speedway on Sunday afternoon. The next throwback paint scheme we're going to take a look at is my Snyder's throwback scheme to his grandfather, Jimmy Llewellyn, which I found it interesting. Jimmy Llewellyn was his grandfather, which is really, really cool. It's a throwback to his 1950s schemes. I mean, this one, you really don't have colors. You can't really tell, but it's a really cool tribute for sure to his grandfather. It's nice to see that they're going to be tributing him. Good job overall. Definitely look forward to see this one out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. The next throwback we're going to be taking a look at is Ryan Truex's throwback to Marquis Spots. I think like their first ever design in the 1980s. They're throwing it back to that. I really don't know much to say about this throwback, to be honest with you, since I'm not sure the historical significance, except I know it's Marquis Spots' first ever scheme they basically had overall. But I found it interesting they're doing that, but overall, it's nice to see that they're throwing it back to the company. I like that overall. Definitely looking forward to see this one out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. The next throwback paint scheme is another one that is personal favorite of mine, is Chris Wright's 2020 throwback to Ron Hornaday's 2005. One of my favorite things, instead of having good wrench on the car, they had the good right, which I think that was really, really good tag as well. And also the number fonts. They've done, a lot of these teams have done a really good job on the number fonts. This one's no exception. They did a really good job on this number font as well. And I'm definitely looking forward to see this throwback out on the racetrack at Darlington in the Truck Series on Friday evening. The next throwback we're going to take a look at is Carson Hosevar's throwback to Johnny Benson's Valvoline cars, and he drove for MB2 Motorsports. Nothing bad to say about this scheme. It's really, really awesome. Did a good job tributing this scheme for sure. And this one looks awesome. Definitely one of my favorites so far this year. Definitely look forward to see this one out on the racetrack at Darlington in the Truck Series on Friday evening. The next throwback we're going to take a look at is Austin Dillon's throwback to Fireball Roberts when he drove in the 1950s. Remember, Fireball Roberts signed in 1964 in a horrific crash, one of the first NASCAR superstars that came into play. Solid throwback overall, in my opinion. Really, really great. Did a good job matching the colors up pretty well. Definitely look forward to see this one out on the racetrack at Darlington. The other RCR driver's throwback we're going to take a look at is Tyler Reddick's throwback to Marty Robbins. Of course, he's got a record company as well, which of course sells records, of course, sponsoring this weekend as well. Did a good job on his throwback for sure, and definitely looking forward to see this throwback out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. Next throwback paint scheme we are going to be taking a look at is Ty Gibbs' throwback to Dale Jarrett when he was the first. Of course, Dale Jarrett was the first driver who drove for Joe Gibbs, so a lot of times they end up throwing back to the old Interstate Batteries cars. Again, it's really cool the Interstate Batteries is stepping up to play and sponsor. It's really interesting to Ty Gibbs and Dale Jarrett kind of had a beef earlier this year, but I think they did a really good job on his throwbacks. There's nothing bad to say about it, and it's one of my favorite throwbacks as well so far this year. There's been a lot of good ones this year, by the way. The next throwback paint scheme we're going to be taking a look at is Spencer Davis' throwback to Darrell Waltrip when he drove in the Truck Series for his own organization around 2004 and 2005 and ran a couple select races before he ended up officially retiring from NASCAR. Solid throwback, in my opinion, from the image. The color schemes look really, really awesome. Definitely look forward to see his throwback out on the racetrack at Darlington later this week. The next throwback we're taking a look at is Chandler Smith's throwback to Safelite. Instead of having the black colors they've had on there for quite some time, they're throwing it back to the beginning where they had white colors on their trucks. Very interesting to Safelite have white at the beginning. Usually you think of, when you think of Safelite, they have black, but interesting at the beginning of their time, they had this white on the cars. So, nice throwback for sure. Definitely looking forward to see this one, and hopefully we'll give Chandler Smith a lot of success going forward later this year. The next throwback we're going to go ahead and take a look at is Corey LaJoie's throwback. And this actually, in my opinion, is my favorite throwback that we've seen so far. He is throwing it back to Alan Coexi's Xerox car that he had in the 1990s. This is my favorite, of course. And what really is so cool about this one, like the Gatorade scheme for Michael and I, this one has the sponsor sponsoring as well. It perfectly matches up. The colors are awesome. The number font is great too. I like it a lot. One of my personal favorite throwback that has come out so far this year. The next throwback we're taking a look at is BJ McLeod's throwback to Ken Schrader's rookie year in the Cup Series when he drove for Junie Donlevy. Good throwback overall too. Nice throwback for sure. Great to see BJ McLeod's going to be running Xfinity Series with the 90 team. Great throwback overall for sure. The next throwback we're taking a look at is Joe Graf Jr.'s throwback to Back to the Future as well. So a lot of people like the scheme, and for me, I also like this paint scheme a lot too. Like I said, it's a nod to Back to the Future. They did a good job overall on this paint scheme for sure, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this throwback out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. The next throwback paint scheme we are going to look at today is Alex Abay's throwback to Kenny Wallace's Big Red Dot scheme that he had from 1984 to 1996 in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Got nothing but positive vibes on this one. Kenny Wallace is one of my personal favorite drivers, of course, since he's from Missouri. He's one of my personal favorite drivers that race in NASCAR from times. So it's great to see that he's throwing it back to Kenny Wallace. Solid paint scheme overall, and definitely forward to see this throwback out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. And then the final throwback paint scheme that got revealed here in the last couple days is Bailey Curry's throwback to Mike Stefanik. We already have one Mike Stefanik throwback that is going to be running. That is, of course, Austin Hill, who is running that throwback as well. But Bailey Curry is also going to be running a throwback to Mike Stefanik as well. So it's really, I think they did a good job overall in this paint scheme. And I'm definitely looking forward to see this one out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. A lot of paint schemes for sure. Now we're going to jump into all the other stories that we need to talk about today, because there's a lot of other stories that we need to talk about. So let's go ahead and start off with Darlington International Speedway once again, as Darlington's Xfinity Series fall race sponsor, once again, Sports Clips has renewed for the Xfinity Series, and it's going to be called the Sports Clips Haircuts VFW Healthy Hero 200. It's great to see that Sports Clips is sponsoring the Xfinity Series. Once again, they've sponsored the Xfinity Series for quite a few years. I think since about 2014, 2015, they've been sponsoring the Xfinity Series. So it's definitely really cool that Darlington is going to be doing that for sure. And I really, really like that. That's awesome news for sure. The next thing we're going to talk about are some point changes in regards to Xfinity Series and the Truck Series as well. So here's some changes in regards. So Bailey Curry, Timmy Hill, and Jamija McLeod have switched from the Xfinity Series in their points over to the Truck Series points, and Kaz Gralla has now switched points to Truck Series. Well, he's been earning points in the Cup Series. He'll be doing points now in the Truck Series, which means Kaz Gralla probably has some races lined up in the Truck Series. Races have not been announced for Kaz Gralla at this time, from the fact that he basically brought up that he basically had eye emojis when this got announced. I found it really intriguing that this is basically going on. I'm very interested to see what team he's going to be driving for going forward later this year. The next thing we're going to talk about are owners' points changes. So we had a couple teams to switch owner points. So the Ram 34 organization, the second team in the Ram Brothers organization, has now the 44 Nice Motorsports points, and Nice Motorsports 44 organization now has the Ram 34 points, basically meaning that Ram's 34 organization goes to 25th in the owners' points, and Nice's 34 team, there's 44 team goes down to like 37th or 38th in the points, which means Nice Motorsports is probably going to catch up to Ram Brothers, since Ram Brothers probably are not going to be fast, to be perfectly honest with you. Probably Nice Motorsports is going to catch up and take over that place. It's really interesting if they've taken over the owner points for sure. I definitely find that really intriguing, because, you be honest with you, I didn't expect them to basically do that, but definitely some really intriguing news for sure, and I'm definitely intrigued to see what's going to happen going forward on that front. The next thing we're going to talk about is starting lineups in regards to the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and the Truck Series. So for the Truck Series, John Nemechek is going to be starting on the pole, and I believe Austin Hill is going to be starting on the front row as well. John Nemechek is going to be who finished second, will be starting pole, because Kyle Busch is not racing, since this is part of the Triple Truck Challenge. No Cup Series drivers are allowed to run in this event. John Nemechek is not my pick going this. Ben Rhodes, who starts fifth, is going to be my pick going into the Truck Series. Now we go to the Xfinity Series, where AJ Allmendinger is going to be on the pole for that, and Austin Cindric is going to be on the outside pole going into that. My pick is going to be Noah Gragson. I believe it's starting 6th or 7th in this race. Noah Gragson is a guy that's known to run the hotline pretty solidly. I think that Noah Gragson is going to be my pick going into that. And then we have the Cup Series starting lineup, which Brad Keselowski is going to be starting on the pole for that. My pick is going to be Chase Elliott, who's starting 5th in the race. Chase Elliott is really, really good here at Darlington. He's should have honestly won the last couple times we've been here at Darlington International Speedway. That's just my opinion on that, but I think Chase Elliott is going to be my pick going forward into that. That's my honest thoughts on that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to be talking about the Indy 500 commentary team. That's right, the Indianapolis 500 commentary team has officially been announced, and the reason we're talking about this is there's a few significant names that are going to be commentating this race. Jimmy Johnson, Danica Patrick, Steve Letarte, and Mike Tirico are going to be the main people doing the pre-race show and all that stuff. Meanwhile, you're going to have the normal cast of like Lee Diffie, Paul Tracy, and Townsend Bell are going to be commentating the race. People like Dave Burns and Marty Steiner are going to be on pit road. Kelly Stout's going to be on pit road. And then Earnhardt Jr., Rutledge Wood, and Jack Collinsworth are going to be part of that. The Indy 500 lineup for sure is really, really stacked this year. They've got a great lineup of TV personnel, especially Jimmy Johnson. I think he's making his TV debut, or actually not his TV debut, but his first time commentating Indy 500, as he's not going to be racing any of the oval races this year, though there's a good chance that he could be running in the Indy 500 here coming up here in the next couple of years. But I think they have a really solid thing, and also Danica Patrick, of course, who's also going to be commentating in the SRX on CBS as well. I'm very interested to see how she's going to do. I think that she honestly could do a really good job being a commentator. I'm definitely super intrigued to see what she is going to be doing going forward, and I cannot wait to see what she is going to do going forward in the NASCAR truck, and basically in that. I think this is really exciting news for sure. I'm definitely looking forward to see what she is going to be doing going forward. I think that she has a lot of intrigue, a lot of questioning, and I'm very excited to see what she's going to do for sure on that front. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about Shane Wilson. As Shane Wilson is going to be officially taking over as crew chief for Ryan Sieg starting this weekend at Darlington International Speedway. Shane Wilson was fired, I believe, from Brett Holmes Racing not too long ago. He was let go from that organization. He had crew chief last year for Ryan Sieg, but they basically brought back Cowboy Sterling to be the crew chief this year. I think Ryan Sieg has kind of struggled this year. Shane Wilson has been a very, very solid crew chief. He's crew chief for guys like Timothy Peters, Ryan Sieg. We saw how much Ryan Sieg really improved last year and over the last couple of years. I think Shane Wilson's guy know how to get set up stunned. He's also a former racer, of course, so he knows how to race as well. But Shane Wilson, I think, is going to be a really big help for Ryan Sieg. This is definitely some awesome news for sure that Ryan Sieg is going to have someone like Shane Wilson coming back and basically working the crew chief for him and work with him going forward. This is definitely one of my favorite things I've heard in the last couple of days for sure. And now we're going to jump onto the next story of today's episode, as we're going to be talking about Eric Darnell. As Eric Darnell is going to be making his NASCAR Truck Series return, driving the number 45 for Niece Motorsports in the Darlington Throwback weekend. As we know, Brett Moffitt's basically out. Basically, he's going to run part-time, I think, this year. But Brett Moffitt's not going to be really running much more this year with Niece Motorsports, as he's changed his points from the Truck Series to the Xfinity Series because he's driving for Our Motorsports, so he switched over to the Xfinity Series points. He's also bringing Northern Tool as a sponsor. When I saw his name come on, I was like, what? Eric Darnell is coming back? It seems like Niece Motorsports has a trend of basically bringing back drivers that have been retired for quite so long. You have guys like Travis Pastrana, who raced in NASCAR for a couple of years, come back. James Buescher has made his return a couple times this year. Really incredible to see that Eric Darnell is coming out of retirement. I'm very intrigued to see how he's new, because he's not raced in NASCAR, to my knowledge, I think since 2011, when he drove for Curtis Key in the Xfinity Series, when he drove the 40. The guy actually won, of course, with the sponsor. He won with that team, with Roush Family Racing. He was a Roush development driver. Ran also in the Xfinity Series a couple times with Roush as well. Wasn't as successful, but he had some decent runs with that organization. But I'm really excited to see that Eric Darnell is coming back out of retirement, and he's going to be racing. I think the goal for Eric Darnell is to try to finish in the top 20 in the race. The competition, Niece Motorsports, isn't as great of an organization. They had pretty solid runs this past weekend here at Kansas Speedway, with Bailey Curry having a decent run overall, and then Ross Chastain basically almost winning the race in the Truck Series. But that's talent, of course. Eric Darnell hasn't raced in a while. I think the goal for Eric Darnell is try to finish in the top 20 race. I know that's a really, really high overall goal for him to get, but I think that is not overall the worst goal overall to get, in my honest and sincere opinion. That's just my honest opinion, though, on that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about motorsports games. About a month ago, we talked about how motorsports games is basically in the part of acquisition of basically taking over Studio 397, and they have officially done that today. If you see the screenshot, why is the screenshot in story so important? This is important to the next NASCAR game. Studio 397, of course, is the company that is made R Factor 2. And there are drivers that really, really, really praise Studio 397 for R Factor 2. Remember, when they took over R Factor 2 around 2013, 2014, they basically did a really good job on that game basically improving, because when the game basically came out really a long time ago, the game was overall not that solid. But they basically took over that company, and now this is awesome news. The screenshot is awesome. I'm definitely looking forward, because I can tell you, I've not been this hyped for a NASCAR game in quite some time. I think NASCAR Heat 3, NASCAR Heat 4 was the best NASCAR game we've had in a long time. But I think overall the NASCAR Heat franchise wasn't great. Motorsports Games is taking this very, very seriously. You got people from all different racing companies, all that stuff. People from Co-Masters coming organists. And now you have a company like Studio 397 who developed R Factor 2 coming in. This is really, really exciting news for sure. And I'm definitely excited to hear this, because I'll tell you truthfully, really awesome to see that Motorsports Games is doing the acquisition for this, because this is really, really big news overall for that company. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about Dale Earnhardt Jr. Remember at the beginning of the episode I mentioned that Dale Earnhardt Jr. is making his NASCAR Xfinity Series return? You heard that right. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is going to be making his NASCAR Xfinity Series return on September 11th at Richmond International Speedway, honoring veterans as well, with Unilever USA being the sponsor of the car. He'll drive the A car, which means Sam Mayer is not going to be driving that car. I think Dale Jr. honestly has a very, very good shot of winning the race. Dale Earnhardt Jr. has always been, when he's ran these one-off races, he's usually been very competitive. Remember, 2018, he didn't end up winning a race. Christopher Bell ended up winning a race, but he led laps. I think he won a stage as well, if I'm not mistaken. And he ended up finishing, I believe, 3rd or 4th in the race. So he ended up finishing top 5. At Darlington, he also, I believe, got a 5th or 6th place finish in 2019. And at Homestead in 2020, he was overall very solid as well in the first time they ran at Homestead at Miami Speedway. And now he's coming back. I honestly, like I mentioned, he won the race in 2016. He's going over to Junior Motorsports. He's got Taylor Moyer with being the crew chief for that as well. I think that Dale Earnhardt Jr. has a very, very solid and a very good shot of going out there winning race. I actually don't think he's going to win the race overall, but I think he has a very solid shot. But I can tell you, I'm super excited to see that Dale Jr. is coming back to run in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Going to show these young guys how to get some, because the competition in Xfinity right now isn't the greatest. Yes, you have guys like Austin Cindric, who's been doing really good. People like Noah Grayson, I think, are solid, and Harrison Burr. But I think that Dale Earnhardt Jr. is going to show these kids that are racing how to get it done, and I think that he's a very good shot of winning the races. We'll have to see what happens, but I think that Dale Earnhardt Jr. overall has a very solid and a very good shot of going out there and winning in the Xfinity Series at Richmond International Speedway. And now we're going to jump onto the next story of today's episode. As we're talking about Darlington, actually we're talking about Kansas Speedway, as we're talking about the TV ratings from Kansas Speedway. So, according to Adam Stern, FS1 earned a 1.62 rating and 2.739 million viewers for the Bushy McBush Race 400. This is up 26% from 2019, though this was on a Saturday night, and most watched event on FS1 since the National League Championship Series. Keep in mind that this race actually was going up against things like the Kentucky Derby and the NFL Draft, which brought in huge, huge ratings. The NFL Draft was so big this weekend, one of the biggest NFL drafts I can remember. There was a lot of people watching that, a lot of new fans of the NFLs were watching that. And of course, the Kentucky Derby, which is one of the biggest racing events in the world. You're going to have a lot of people tuning into that. The fact that NASCAR got this much ratings, because all things considered, with the fact that you had all that stuff going on, is really good. But also, I believe, is the most watched Kansas race in 5 years. I think that this shows that NASCAR, if rain delays don't happen, the ratings overall can go up. These numbers are really good, and also for cable race. I know a lot of people think that's not good numbers. For a Kansas race, a race that's on Fox Sports 1, that's really, really good, considering we've seen a lot of people cable cutting. I think NASCAR is starting to head in the right direction with ratings. Hopefully weather continues to not affect these races, because if they had Daytona 500 beginning of the year, would not have had the issues with rain. We probably would have had incredible ratings for that weekend. We've overall been going back in the trend of having really good ratings overall in a year. Really exciting news on the ratings front for sure, and definitely awesome news going front on that. And now we're going to jump onto the next story of today's episode, as we're going to be talking about Pocono Racing. As it was announced yesterday that Pocono Raceway is officially going to have full capacity for the Pocono doubleheaders. It was announced last week, I believe on Friday, that Atlanta Motor Speedway was going to be having officially full capacity for this event. Now we have the first official race that is going to have full capacity, which is going to be at the Pocono doubleheaders. Pocono Speedway does not surprise me that they've been looking to go back at full capacity. They basically were the first race, if I'm not mistaken, that announced that they were going to have 50% capacity. We've seen other races go down to 20 to 30%, up to 40% of points. Basically, Pocono was the first race to get up to that 50% marker due to restrictions being lifted. With the announcement from Governor Wolf that they're going to be starting to lift some of those restrictions on May 31st, and with the fact that they said that eventually, if they get 70% of Pennsylvania, that they're eventually going to be lifting mass restrictions altogether and getting everything back to normal. This shows to me that everything's going to be back to normal. I think that you're still going to see masking required for this event, even with basically the good chance that government restrictions are going to be going on that front. I do expect that there are still going to be mass restrictions at the races. I don't think they're going to be removing that. But I can tell you this much, that Pocono, the fact that they're going to have full capacity for this event, are super, super awesome. I'm really intrigued and very, very excited about that. And I'm definitely looking forward. I think a lot of people for sure are going to go to the Atlanta weekend and the Pocono doubleheader. And I think we're really going to see how many people enjoy that, because the fact that you're going to have all these races, 2 races happening one day for the fans, is really, really awesome news. And very awesome to see that Pocono International Speedway is going to have full capacity for the Pocono doubleheaders. And now we're going to jump onto the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about next-gen car news. We're actually going to tie 2 of the stories from the next-gen car in this part. So first thing, testing with the next-gen car. So this is something that's been rumored for quite some time, but according to Steve O'Donnell and Bob Pockets Portis, according to Steve O'Donnell, there is going to be a test in Daytona in August with multiple cars on the racetrack. We've seen a couple times where we've seen multiple cars on the track, but this is going to be for the Super Speedway Racing because we've not seen a full-on official test with Super Speedway Racing. The rumor I've been hearing is that they're looking at running every single team is going to bring one car from each of those manufacturers out to do this test. This needs to happen, in my honest opinion. We need it with the next gen car being revealed today, or when you're watching this yesterday. They need to start, basically, in my honest opinion, they need to start testing multiple cars on the track to see how it races together, and not just on the super speedways, and also on other tracks as well, like the short tracks and stuff, like on the road courses and all that, like on the intermediate tracks. We have to start seeing racing with this next-gen car as well going forward. But yeah, I think it's really good to hear that we're going to be seeing next-gen tests. I believe there's also going to be a test at Charlotte in October, if I'm not mistaken, and at Phoenix at the end of the year. But I also would expect a lot more tests going forward with a lot of different drivers. But expect there to be a test late in August. And speaking of which, with the next-gen car, something else that also was reported by Jim Utter was the next-gen inventory. Not a big fan of Jim Utter, by the way, but sometimes he does report really, really good. So let's talk about next-gen inventory. Each NASCAR Cup Series team for the first year of the next-gen car is going to be limited to 7 cars each per team beginning next season. I don't think that counts don't think that counts for backup cars, by the way, since practice qualifying is to be coming back this year. But one of the reasons that it looks like they're going to be limiting the amount of cars in their inventory that a team can have overall is because of the fact that they're going to be basically, of course, this car is supposed to be a team that's going to cut and save money overall. So the fact that they're going to 7 cars, I found it really intriguing. So especially with the fact that these cars are unstable and we're going to super speedways, where there's probably going to be a couple times where teams are going to wreck. Teams are going to have to be really, really careful and really, really cautious. With the composite bodies and the symmetrical bodies, it should be a lot more durable of a car. This car should be super durable. That's why they're going to limit 7 cars, because usually they have a limit, I think, of 12 or 15 cars. They're reducing that to 7 for this upcoming year. I found it definitely really intriguing that they're limiting the inventory on that overall. That's really, really intriguing news for sure. And we'll see how that works out for the teams. And if teams start to struggle, will teams not show up? We'll have to see and watch that going in 2022. And now we're going to jump onto the final story of today's episode, as we're talking about super speedway packages going forward. So, according to a report today during the next-gen reveal, Steve O'Donnell said that there may be a change in speeds at next Super Speedway race following review of Logano's wreck at Talladega. For many of you who did not watch the Talladega race, Joey Logano got flipped off of some contact from Denny Hamlin, with the speed basically being as high as it is at Talladega Super Speedway. And with this current aero package, they were going over 200 miles an hour. They had already done some restrictions on the car going into this year, but basically they're looking to cut the speeds a little bit to basically remove the potential of Joey Logano having a chance, or anybody having a chance of flipping over. Let me just say for the record, flips are not going to happen if drivers don't freaking wreck each other. You're going to have wrecks all the time. You're going to have people that are going to wreck overall. So the fact that they're going to reduce speeds, I think that one of the big things is this big, giant-ass spoiler is one of the key things to why Joey Logano flipped, because he gets such these big and huge runs. And Logano did not put up block. For the one time Logano basically doesn't flip, basically he's not the one who causes all the issues on tracks. It seems like Joey Logano is the one who caused a lot of problems with the wrecks. The fact that Joey Logano is the one complaining, I found really, really intriguing, because Joey Logano, the one being complaining, is really, really interesting. But yeah, it looks like they're going to be changing it. I'm not overall fan of it, to be perfectly honest with you, but it is what it is. We'll find out what happens goes forward on that. We'll keep updating that going forward here really, really soon. So, anyway, that is going to be for today's NASCAR news stories. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications, see me notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links description below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about all the throwback paint schemes that have officially been revealed today? How many of them do you like? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the other major NASCAR stories that we discussed on today's episode? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content. Take care, everybody.